It was supposed to be just another Thursday night dinner at the upscale French place in downtown Chicago. White tablecloths, hushed violin music, and wine that cost more than most people's rent. Victoria Hartwell sat at the center table, lap tucked under her chair, trying to enjoy a few quiet minutes with her son, Theodore. He was only 8, bright-eyed, curious, and way too observant for his age. She was halfway through a sip of her 2009 Bordeaux when Theodore pressed his nose to the glass and said something that made her nearly choke. "Mom," he whispered. "He's my brother." Victoria blinked. "What?" He pointed through the window at a black boy about the same age, skinny, dirty, digging through a trash can outside the valet stand. "Right there, that boy. He looks like me. I think he's my brother." Victoria grabbed his wrist and gently pulled him back into his seat. "Sweetheart, don't be silly," she whispered, glancing around, embarrassed. "You don't have a brother, it's just the two of us." But Theodore didn't let it go. He wriggled free and ran for the restaurant's front door. "Theodore!" she shouted, stumbling after him. By the time she reached the sidewalk, Theodore was already face to face with the other boy. The resemblance hit her like a punch to the chest. Same almond-shaped eyes, same dimpled chin, same exact scar above the left eyebrow, a little crescent-shaped thing Theodore had gotten when he fell off the jungle gym at age 2, and now this street kid had the same one. "What's your name?" Theodore asked him, breathing hard. The boy hesitated. His voice was hoarse, like he hadn't spoken in days. "Thomas!" Theodore lit up. "I'm Theodore. Do you want something to eat? My mom has money. We're eating right in there." Thomas looked up, past Theodore's shoulder. His eyes landed on Victoria, who stood frozen in the doorway. Her face had gone pale. Thomas muttered no thanks and turned to leave, hoisting a torn-up backpack over his shoulder. But Theodore wasn't done. He followed. "Wait, how do you have this scar?" he asked, pointing to his eyebrow. "I had the exact same one." Victoria felt like the sidewalk beneath her might give out. That scar. It was too specific, too personal. Her body went cold, and a memory slammed back like a freight train. 8 years ago. The hospital. She was young, scared, unmarried, and pregnant. Her family's doctor, Dr. Richardson, had sat her down and told her what was best. "Victoria," he'd said smoothly, "you're a businesswoman. A single mother won't look good. Let me take care of everything." And for a while, she let him. But then Theodore was born and something shifted. She couldn't give him up. She wanted him, needed him. Dr. Richardson had seemed irritated, but told her there were no complications, no records, no loose ends. Now, watching her son reach for a boy who looked exactly like him, Victoria realized there were loose ends. One of them was standing in front of her. "Theodore," she called shakily, "come here. Right now." But the look on Tomas's face, it stopped her. There was something familiar there, a softness, a cautious curiosity. He looked at Theodore like he couldn't believe someone cared. Theodore tugged his hand. "Can he come with us? Just for the night. He has nowhere to go." Victoria knelt down, really seeing Thomas for the first time. The same eyes, the same chin, the same stubborn glint. How did you get that scar?" she asked. Thomas blinked, touched it instinctively. "They told me I fell when I was a baby, when I was 2, I think. The lady at the orphanage said I was left in a box by a hospital." Her legs buckled. They drove home in silence. Theodore chatted the whole way, as if he and Thomas had known each other for years. Victoria's hands trembled on the wheel. The resemblance was uncanny, not just in appearance, but the way they spoke, the way they moved, the way they both tilted their heads when they were curious. Once home, she tucked them in, Thomas in the guest room, Theodore in his usual bed, and climbed up into the attic. She dug through the box of old documents until she found what she was looking for, the medical files, birth records, ultrasound reports. She scanned the pages with mounting dread. There it was, Richardson Private Medical Center, delivery at 3:47 a.m., and then it came back to her, a moment she'd buried, right after giving birth to Theodore. Still groggy, She remembered hearing another baby crying. She'd asked Dr. Richardson about it. He said it was just another woman down the hall. Echoes, he'd said. But now she remembered it clearer. A voice outside her room. The second baby's been transferred, and the adoptive family is ready. The second baby. No, it couldn't be. She remembered asking why she'd only gained 4 pounds during her pregnancy. Some babies are small, Richardson had said with a smile. Your body adjusted well. She remembered how he always insisted on private ultrasounds, how there were never other patients around when she came in. The next morning, Victoria called the clinic. The receptionist sounded annoyed. Oh, Dr. Richardson, he retired 2 years ago, moved out of state, left in the middle of an investigation into adoption irregularities. Victoria dropped the phone. Victoria didn't waste time. That afternoon, she hired a private investigator, a former federal agent named Derek Knox, and gave him one job: find out everything there was to know about Dr. Richardson's past. 48 hours later, she had a 30-page report in her hands, and by the time she reached the last page, her world had completely shattered. According to the report, Dr. Robert Richardson had been the subject of multiple closed investigations tied to illegal adoptions, specifically involving newborn twins. He targeted wealthy single mothers, sedated them during labor, and forged birth records to show they'd only had one baby. The second baby, always healthy, always well-matched genetically for wealthy buyers, was sold for up to $500,000 0 cents. Victoria matched the timeline, the hospital, the fake records, the exact same scar. She felt like she might throw up. Her son had been stolen from her, and she hadn't even known. Over the next few days, Thomas started adjusting to life in the mansion, but you could tell he didn't fully believe it yet. He ate like it might disappear, hid food under the bed, woke up at night to make sure he wasn't alone. His hands were calloused. He flinched when adults raised their voice. Theodore asked, "Why does Thomas scream at night?" Victoria could barely answer. One afternoon, she watched them playing outside. Theodore was teaching Thomas to hit a tennis ball. They were laughing, grinning, running back and forth, and for a second, it felt like looking at a memory that never got to exist. Same reflexes, same rhythm, same exact laugh. Then she saw something else. The way Thomas shrank back when a gardener approached to offer them water. The way he tightened his grip on the racket, ready to run. A mother's instinct never lies, and now hers was screaming. Later that night, after the boys were asleep, she went back to the files. The report said Richardson had moved to Illinois under a new name, Robert Richardson Hayes. He was living in a wealthy suburb of Chicago, giving lectures on medical ethics. The gall of it. He'd reinvented himself as a consultant for high-end fertility clinics, claiming decades of experience helping families through difficult decisions. Victoria felt something rising inside her. Not just rage, purpose. This man had built a career, a life, off the lie that she'd only had one child. She picked up the phone. "Sarah Chun?" she asked when the voice answered. "I need the best attorney in the country for crimes against children." Sarah came over the next day, sharp, precise, and with a calm that could slice through steel. After reading the report, she looked up and said, "Victoria, this is one of the most sophisticated child trafficking rings I've ever seen. But we're going to need more than this." Victoria nodded. "I'm ready to go as far as it takes." Sarah leaned back. "This wasn't a one-time thing. If Richardson did it to you, he did it to others." They got to work. Within 3 weeks, Sarah had tracked down 4 more mothers who had experienced eerily similar pregnancies at the same clinic, with the same doctor and the same red flags. One woman had given birth to a single girl, but always swore she heard 2 babies cry. Another had signed what she thought were insurance forms, only to later learn her files had been sealed. Every one of them had felt something was missing, but were told they were just being hormonal. One of them was Jennifer Walsh. She had been 22 when she gave birth to twins. Or so she thought. "They told me I was wrong," she said, voice shaking over Zoom, "that I imagined it." Sarah tracked down Jennifer's second daughter, now living with a family in Connecticut who had no idea the adoption was illegal. They were devastated, but willing to cooperate. Same with Michael Torres, whose son was sold overseas. Same with Lisa Morrison, who found out the celebrity couple who raised her second child had no idea he had a twin brother. The evidence mounted. The rage deepened. Victoria focused on healing the boys, but at night in her office, she worked with Sarah, building a case so airtight that no one could squirm out of it. Then, Sarah brought the final piece. She sat down across from Victoria and laid a thick folder on the desk. "We've got it." "What?" "Richardson kept records," Sarah said. "All of them. He wrote everything down, families, dates, prices. He even tracked which children were more marketable." Victoria stared in disbelief. "Why?" "Because he's planning to sell the story to a documentary producer. He's pitching it like he was involved in some kind of moral gray zone. But really, he just wants the money." Victoria stood slowly. "When is the meeting?" "Next Tuesday, Continental Hotel. He's bringing the files." Victoria exhaled. For the first time in weeks, her hands stopped shaking. They had him. What Richardson didn't know was that Sarah had already placed an undercover investigator on the case, posing as the interested filmmaker. Everything was set. Hidden mics, multiple families in the hotel, federal agents in the lobby, cameras in place. And when Richardson walked in with his Italian briefcase, grinning like he was still in control, Victoria was already there, waiting. The Continental Hotel was humming quietly that Tuesday morning. Suited professionals moving through the marble lobby, soft piano music echoing from the bar. No one noticed the briefcase. No one noticed the man in his early 60s with silver hair and an expensive coat. To everyone else, he looked like a visiting executive. But to Victoria, hiding just behind a marble pillar, he looked like everything she'd spent the last 8 years trying to forget. Dr. Robert Richardson, now going by Hayes, stepped inside at exactly 10:00 a.m. He scanned the room with practiced confidence, unaware that 4 federal agents were already tracking his every move. He spotted a man in a gray blazer and horn-rimmed glasses seated near the bar. "Mr. Johnson?" Richardson asked, extending his hand. "Yes, doctor, thank you for coming." The man was Sarah Chun's investigator, a seasoned undercover agent, wired with state-of-the-art audio. The tape recorder in his pocket was already running. They ordered espresso. Richardson chuckled as he laid the briefcase on the table. "You're going to want to hear this," he said, cracking open the latches. 12 cases, all successful. Every one of them was a high-end adoption. Johnson raised an eyebrow. "Successful?" Richardson leaned in, speaking in the tone of a man used to secrecy. "Single mothers, no husbands, no close relatives. We sedated them, forged the paperwork, sold the second twin to high-paying families. Win-win for everyone. How much did you make?" Richardson laughed under his breath. "About $4,200,000, 0 cents in total. I picked the cases carefully. No loose ends." Johnson nodded like he was impressed. Richardson kept talking, bragging, detailing how he kept in touch with some of the adoptive families, extorting them later under the guise of follow-up care. It was a business model built on silence and shame. And just as he flipped to a page with the name Theodore Hartwell, a voice cut through the air like a blade. "Good morning, doctor." He looked up. Victoria Hartwell was standing there, black blazer, hair pulled back, calm as a surgeon. Behind her stood Thomas, 10 years old, eyes locked on the man who stole his life. Richardson's face drained of color. "Victoria," he stammered, trying to shut the briefcase. "I didn't expect—" "No, I'm sure you didn't," she replied coldly. "After all, I'm just the single mother you drugged, the one you thought would stay quiet forever." He started to rise. Johnson grabbed his arm. "Sit down," he said calmly. "This meeting isn't over." Then Jennifer Walsh stepped out from behind a potted plant. Michael Torres came from the hallway. Lisa Morrison followed, carrying a folder of her own. Each of them stared down the man who had stolen from them. "This is insane," Richardson sputtered. You don't understand. I helped families." "No," Victoria said. "You sold them." Sarah Chun approached from the far side of the room, flanked by 2 U.S. Marshals. She opened the briefcase and turned it toward the cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen, you are looking at 12 cases of child trafficking. Names, prices, dates, all cataloged by Dr. Richardson himself." Richardson lunged for the case. Too late. He was handcuffed mid-motion, agents twisting his arms behind his back. "You're under arrest for child trafficking, fraud, document forgery, and extortion," one of them read out loud. "Anything you say," Richardson shouted, eyes wide with panic. "I was a respected doctor." Victoria stepped closer. "No. You were a coward in a lab coat," she said, her voice razor sharp. "You built a career off the suffering of mothers and babies. And now you'll face every single one of us." As he was dragged out, he turned one last time toward Thomas, but the boy looked away. He didn't need an apology. He had his family now. 2 years later, Victoria stood in the sunlit garden of her new home, watching her boys chase each other through the grass. The state had awarded her a $12 million, 0-cent settlement after Richardson's conviction. Money she used to build a foundation, a home, and a future. Thomas now thrived in school. His math skills were off the charts, and his science project on missing children had won statewide honors. Theodore, always the protector, started a student group that raised money for orphanages across Illinois. They were inseparable. Their bond was something no amount of pain could erase. And Victoria? She became a national voice. Her testimony before Congress helped pass the Victoria Hartwell Act, requiring biometric birth recordings in all private hospitals. 3 states had already adopted it. The ripple effects were enormous. 10 of the 12 twin sets had been reunited. The foundation she created, the Thomas and Theodore Project, provided free legal aid to families affected by illegal adoption schemes. 45 more families had been reconnected across the country. As for Richardson, he was serving a 35-year sentence in federal prison. His reputation was gone, his money seized, his ex-wife had divorced him publicly, he had been moved 3 times due to threats from other inmates. Sarah kept Victoria updated. "He's still trying to appeal," she said, "but there's 0 chance." Sometimes letters poured into Richardson's cell from the families he had hurt. Some begged for answers, others offered only rage. But one letter came every month, always handwritten. It read, "You stole a child from me. I made sure no one else ever goes through what I did." It wasn't signed. He knew who it was from. One night, after tucking both boys into bed, Victoria sat by the window with a cup of tea. The stars were out. Thomas came down the stairs. "Mom?" She turned. "What's wrong? Do you think he's sorry?" She paused, thought about it. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I do know this. His regret isn't our responsibility." Thomas nodded slowly. "We made it," he said. Victoria smiled, pulling him in for a hug. "Yes, we did." And as they stood there, quiet, the world outside moved on, but inside that home, 2 brothers, torn apart by greed, were finally whole. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, because the deepest scars sometimes lead to the greatest transformations. And no force on earth is stronger than a mother who fights for her child.